For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to explore Petra, to be able to scramble around amongst those ancient rock-cut tombs and experience what this place is really like. And Petra does not disappoint. If anything, it's even more fascinating in reality. But that's not all. I also wanted to capture the city and recreate it in Unreal Engine. And I will share this process on this channel. But it's a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Hello, hope you're doing quite alright. Today I want to take a look at this tomb that I scanned out in Petra, and I have since published it on the Fab Store. And in a previous video I went through quite a lot of details of how to relight it and all kinds of other stuff. But in this episode here I wanted to talk about the ins and outs of publishing it to the Fab Store and importing it into Unreal Engine. So we want to take a look at what the problems are, and there are quite a few, and also what the decisions are for making it the way it is. And I'm talking about texture size, which resolution on the meshes, and that kind of stuff. So you can see here it comes in 3 parts. So I got a couple of rocks here on the sides, and I got the big centerpiece. And here I have all the assets that it comes in with. Now, this is not what it's going to look like when you drag-drop it in from an FBX file, or if you use the Fab import tool. So it's supposed to look like this, but it's not really happening. And yeah, well, let's say there is issues with the Fab Store. Well, luckily it is improving day by day. So eventually we might get there, but there are lots of issues with importing and shaders that doesn't hook up. So I do recommend that when you import it, don't think that whatever you get in here, that's everything, because you should check on disk what also comes in other folders and that kind of thing. There will be extra textures, because unfortunately we freelance creators like this don't have access to exactly the same tools as the Megascan people have. So when they have it, you just click a button and you choose what you want to import, which resolution, size, etc. And it looks great. It comes in, or everything hooked up. There is some kind of an ambition here that it should work, but it doesn't really. There's tons of issues with that. And I would consider it to be pretty much completely broken. So do not trust this if you're using anybody else than Megascans. So it's extremely frustrating for us solo creators that it is like this, and we should be on the same level playing field as the Megascans people, but there we are. So I'm just going to inform you what to do if you choose to get something that's not made by Megascans. I wanted to talk about this tomb, so let's check it out in Blender. So it consists of 3 parts. So I got the center part, and then I got these 2 rocks here on either side. Now the thing is, when you're dealing with a relatively large object like this, it's how to divide it. Because you can't, of course, have one big texture for everything. And also, when you export this as an FBX, you need it to be importable in the positions like I have here, so it doesn't ruin the composition. So it's easy enough to bundle everything together and just keep them in the middle. But to keep them out here, so that when you drag drop it into Unreal Engine, they actually come in at the exact positions that they should. First of all, we are talking about 8K textures. That's pretty much my new standard now. 8K is the new 4K. In that way, when you export it as an FBX, you can easily go down to 4K. You can scale it yourself, or you can set the parameters in Unreal Engine or wherever. So what does it consist of? Well, we got one object here, so that's one 8K texture with a normal map, roughness, and a albedo. And the same goes for that. So this is actually pretty straightforward. But what I had to do, because these are actually joined in the scan, so I kind of had to separate them out so that they can be puzzled together. Now this one came with a tiny gap, so it was a little bit easier. Now the trickier thing is here, you got this one here. So if this one is 8K and this one is 8K, then if this one would be 8K, it wouldn't be enough resolution. So either you go the way where you split it up into 2 parts, and then you have one 8K texture on each. However, this one is a very solid object. There's not really any splits to be done. So that's why I opted for the UDIM solution. So I would put these on 2 different UDIMs, and I thought that would be enough. Let's take a look here in Houdini, and I want to explain why I did what I did, why it looks like what it looks like. So what I'm talking about here is why I chose to go with UDIMs here, and what drives whenever I want to split it up into different parts, like I have here on the rocks on the sides here. And it all comes from ZBrush. And here we have the same tomb loaded up as a tool in ZBrush. And as you can see, I've chosen to put it at around 50 million polygons, just a little bit south of 50 million. So that is my guiding star when it comes to this. So in ZBrush, if you go above something like between 50 and 60 million, it starts to complain. You can increase the memory there and start working with it if you're above 60 million, but you do increase a lot of errors. You can get crashes and things like that. So the safe bet is to put it around 50 and you're always going to be good. And I say between 40 and 60 million is where a mesh like this should end up. So what that means is that you make one big mesh like this, and if it's above 50 million, you split it up into another one. Now the problem with this one here is that there are no natural splits anywhere. So when I had the rocks on the sides there, I could easily sculpt them as two separate objects. But here it's just one big one, and that's why I chose to go with UDIMs instead. Now that introduces a couple of problems. There's not necessarily any problem with the UDIMs. It's a well-established technique and everybody should know how to use it, etc. But it does complicate things just a slight bit. If you want the drag and drop feeling, you have to start tweaking a bit because it requires different textures and you need to put in, you have to load the UDIMs, etc. Let's get back into Houdini. So if I go into the UV editor, you can see here that I split them up as 2 separate UDIMs. Now the thing is that there is a texture limit, resolution limit in Unreal Engine, and that's 16Ks. So if I use 8K here and 8K there, that's going to be 16K. So I can only use 2 if I'm going with 8K resolution. So that's a limitation, but only for Unreal Engine. If this was a movie prop, I would go with like 10 UDIMs or something like that easily. Another reason for why I go with around 50 million polygons before I split it up into a different object or go with UDIMs is because of the normal map. And this ties back to how big the mesh is, and it all ties back to that ZBrush that I showed you. So if you calculate 50 million polygons, how big of a resolution you need to get that to fit into a normal map, you will quickly find out that around 50 million polys per object is the perfect size for a normal map. Now, what I mean with that is that if we calculate that each pixel is 1 polygon on a normal map, then we can calculate how many pixels we need to get the resolution to match. And for that, we're going to need the calculator. If we're going to use a 4K normal map, let's see how many pixels that is. So it's 4096 by 4096. And that equals 16.777. So this is the amount of polygons you can max fit into a normal map. However, into this comes the UV layout. And if you've done any UV layouting, you would know that you can't use all the available area. And a good UV layout uses about 70% of the area. So we can easily take this number and just multiply it by 0.7. And this is the real maximum number that we get from a normal map. So if you've got a 4K texture, you don't really need a object that's got higher resolution than, let's say around 12 million. So that kind of informs us that if you got a 50 million poly object, a 4K is going to be too low for that. Now, this is not 100% accurate because you can do a little bit of oversampling and stuff like that, but still it's pretty close to what it does. So that means if you have an 8K texture, that would be the perfect size for a 50 million poly tool. So let's see what that looks like. So 8,192 times 8,192. That's 67 if you would use the maximum area, and then times 0.7. So now we have a number of 47 million. So there you can see around 50 million is just about right what you need. Yeah, that is if you're going to use 8K textures, of course, which would be the absolute max that you want to use for this. So that means making a 16K texture is going to be very redundant unless you have a very good reason for it. And that also means that for my centerpiece here with the 2 UDIMs, it's going to be around 100 million polys back and front, which is a little bit more than I have. I actually only have 60 million in total for this, for my high-res mesh. A little bit overkill to go with 8K already. But it's all fine. It's all a rule of thumb. But I hope that helps a little bit so you don't have to feel the pressure to get too much information in there, because it's just not going to stick anyways. We are in Unreal Engine. And this is the folder where I have all my exports. These are all the textures, etc. And this would be the FBX. So this is very similar to what it looks like if you get it from the Fab Store, because this is my publishing file. But let's drag this one into the scene. So I'm just going to drag the FBX in. And the dialog comes up. Now, first of all, let's check what it looks like with the absolute default settings. So we're on the same page here. So just click that. And without checking anything else, I'm just going to click import. And we'll see what we get. And it's in. And let's analyze this little bit of a mess here. And this is one of the reasons why I don't pack it with all kinds of textures. I just use the ones I actually find very, very useful. So because it all gets kind of dumped into a huge folder like this, and then you have to sort through it. So let's see. Here we got the little rock, and there's the other rock. And here you can see we got the tube. And this one now comes in dark, because at this point, the Unreal Engine can't interpret UDIMs as a VT, as a virtual texture. It should set up an automatic material and get that to work, but it does not. So there's lots of funny business going on with this, how it interprets things. Now there is a page where you can read how to set it up correctly. And believe me, I've done that, but it's pretty impossible to get it to work correctly. I can tell you that. So what you should do is you have the model, and then you bundle all of this into one big folder, and that should work. But as you can see here, for some reason, I have now one texture. These ones are the same, by the way. So one comes in as a non-VT texture, and this one, the same one, comes in as a VT texture. So one of them has to go, of course. So these ones comes in correctly, the normals and the roughness. And the same here, got a double up there. And as you might see here, there is no texture for this one. But let's see what they look like if I drag them in. So here we go. We got one here. You can see by design, it actually comes in with the pivot point on the side here. And the same goes for this one. So this is normally not what we want. If we want to use these boulders here as standalone objects, this is not how we wanted to do. Now this can be remedied at import. There is a setting for this where you get the pivot in the middle, and this one will center it in the middle as well. But in this case, this actually helps us, because what we want to do, we want to select all of these three here and drag them in like so. So that means that they now keep the position. So this comes in pretty much like one object. And what we can do then, if we go to our little outliner here. So this one is the center, and then let's just find the other two. It's this one. Let's see, this one. Yeah. It's this one. Let's drag that underneath there. And this one as well underneath there. So now we kind of do a parent operation here. So if I select this one now only, they're always going to move together. So this is one way of keeping things together, like one object, if you have multiple. Now, you can also do this with a blueprint, and there are probably other ways as well. But this is by far the simplest and quickest way to do it. It if you want multiple of these, it gets a little fiddly to redo it. Then a blueprint would be preferred. But in this case, this is all fine. All right, let's redo this. I'm going to delete all of these. And we re-import. Let's do another import, and this time we will try to get the pivot point in the center. So in order to do that, there is this button here, Bake Meshes. If you click that to off and then hit import, it should remedy that fact and everything should come into the middle, because now you don't have any extra transforms or whatever could be baked in from the FBX exporter. It comes in more or less raw. Let's see what it looks like. It's kind of similar to what I got before. However, if you look at the meshes here, they look kind of odd, and that's because they are flipped, because now they are so raw that when they get imported, they even have the translations, the rotations oddly flipped. So this all comes down to which program you're exporting it from, if it's got Y up, Z to the left, or whatever combination it could be. So there was a time when not long ago, like a couple of weeks ago only, when this worked perfectly. It came in exactly as it should be. And now I can't get it to work exactly as I wanted. But let's choose these three and we'll drag it in and see what it looks like. First of all, it's super tiny. And that's because it comes in raw, or else there would be a compensator scale factor that would make them fit into the Unreal system here. But what we have to do then is type in 100 and scale it up, and that should be good enough. And this is because, of course, in Houdini we're using meters, and many other programs it's centimeters, etc. So another source of confusion. And then what we got to do is rotate it. You can see rotate it X will be fine, 90 degrees there. And if I just rotate it so we can see it, so still black. Let's move these out, and this one is there, and now you can see everything here is in the middle. So it is kind of working, but it's not absolutely amazing when it comes in and you have to flip it and you have to look at these. Just doesn't look that good. So the best way for now then is to do this in Blender or whatever program you're using. Because it is an FBX, you have the possibility to do whatever you want with them. So just import them, open the FBX in Blender and export it again from there, and you're good to go. And you can see here in Blender that if I click on these objects, they all have the pivot in the center. And all you have to do is zero it out. Same for this. And then you can export them one at a time from here. Let's talk about the textures and the materials. So the FBX tries to connect all the textures to a basic material that it has. And this material is different from all the Unreal Engine 5 point whatever versions. So it's kind of a messy thing, and it seems to be working better in the later versions, but not really working that good at all. So let's see what we got. We got this one, is the Little Petra Rock BSDP. So let's click on its material and see what it tries to do. So first of all, it tries to connect the diffuse color map with this one here, the diffuse color map. So already here it's kind of wrong, because I haven't really done anything that would make it become a virtual texture. This is something it makes up by itself. So you got the virtual texture here, and you got the color here. So this one you could probably, the virtual texture you don't really need to use unless you want to go down that route. And then it connects the normal map and shininess map. In this case would be the roughness map. Now the problem is here that I can't get these to work very well. I don't get the roughness to kick in, and the normal maps seems to be doing quite all right. At least it's doing something, but the roughness I can't get to have any effect. It should be either completely shiny or or very diffuse, but I do not trust this material at all. You can see where it leads to here, legacy Phong surface material. So I do suggest you have your own favorite materials for this, and the maps are kind of easy as they are. It's just a roughness, a normal, and a diffuse. That's pretty much all you need for assets like this. So we got to check also what they are doing. So you can see here, this one is called normals GL. So that means it's in OpenGL space. Now there is on disk, and when you actually import this from the Fab Store, it's going to hook up to the DirectX version automatically. But this is always a good thing to check. You will, if you type in flip here, you get the green channel flip here. So if it is a GL version, you should flip it so it becomes a DirectX version. Now everything is going to look a lot better. But if otherwise, you just keep this off. But I always publish it with the DirectX version. So that means if you use it in Blender, you have to flip it in Blender or assign the other texture, because I do have both on disk. They come with it, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But it's important to get that right, or else it's useless having a normal map. Second thing is to check the roughness. Now, this is what you would consider a mask. So that means whatever it imports this as, it's probably not correct. So you would have to set it to masks, no sRGB. So in I think it's pretty much the same as the standard import, but you will click off the sRGB option here. And now this one should be correct as well. And let's check what a decent material should look like. So this is the version that I did before, where everything is hooked up correctly. So let's check this one here, this one. And here we can see we got the albedo coming in. So I made this really, this is a really fast, a simple material, I call it M Simple Master, is what it parents to. And it just contains an albedo and roughness and the normals. So this is something that you should build. And then you have something for a normal strength and specular strength. But to be honest, all of this could also be, you don't really need it. It's just, to start with, just something that you can hook this up to. So for this, let's check what the Simple Master actually looks like. So first of all, you can see down here, I got a Simple Master, I got a Simple Master VT. And let's see if I double click on this, what it actually looks like. So I got just an albedo that goes into the base color. I got a roughness texture, goes to the roughness, and then a normal map that goes into the normals. Let's see what it looks like when everything is hooked up correctly. So we got an 8K color texture here in sRGB. We got a normal in DirectX mode, so you don't have to flip the green. We have a roughness with the masks chosen, so we got the correct color space. And over here we got virtual textures set for this one, so we can use the UDIMs, or else the UDIMs are not going to work. Yeah, it might look a little bit fiddly, but it's really not that hard as it looks. But I wish in the near future that all of this could be resolved, so we get true drag and drop and everything works. Apparently they can do it for their Megascans assets, so why not make it work for us? I think what Unreal needs is some kind of a publisher for asset creators, so we have something that we can just drag and drop into, and it always gets published correctly, and there is no ifs and buts, and it all gets checked. This is what you normally have in every studio you work at. You just have like a publisher that checks for errors and everything, and then you publish, so nothing can go wrong. Right now, it's slightly messy, but hopefully this helps sorting it out so you can use the stuff. And remember, it's always an FBX, so you can always open it up in your favorite content creation application and fix it there, and then re-export it exactly the way you want it. So with that said, hope to see you around next time.